President, please be seated. The court is now back in session, and again the floor is given to the Deputy Co-Prosecutor to continue putting questions to the witness. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, witness. Is it fair to say that when you came back from your training in Phnom Penh and went to the airfield for the second time, your conditions improved?
When I returned to work at Kampong Chnang, I worked for the terrain surveying section, and the work was lighter in nature than the previous work that I did.
And were others in your unit doing the same work that you did when you first went to the airfield?
Workers in that unit continued to work under the same conditions like the one I did previously.
I'd just like to talk about hygiene. When you were there for the first 2 months before the training, did workers from your unit, did they get to wash and shower? Did they have bath facilities, toilets, all those facilities to keep clean and healthy?
Before I went to attend the training, and while I was working there was no hygiene whatsoever. There were so many flies, and the flies would come to the food that you ate.
You mentioned earlier that you saw people die from starvation and overwork. What happened to their bodies? Were they given a funeral ceremony? Were they buried? Were they cremated? Do you know what happened to them?
At that time, if a worker died, there would be no ritual ceremony for the dead, but the dead body would simply be buried away.
Did workers from your unit have the opportunity to leave the work site and visit families and friends?
We could not even go crossing through another unit working nearby. That was even prohibited.
Does that mean that when people were working, they were guarded by guards?
Yes, there were guards watching over us, and if a worker walked away from the unit, then that worker would be accused of being enemy.
Did the guards carry weapons or not?
The guards for the unit did not carry any weapon.
Did the guards wear different clothes to the people that were working?
Yes, the guards wore different uniforms, and it was in a form of a military uniform.
Can you explain about how many guards there were? For example, if there was 30 or 40 workers working in an area, would there be one guard or two guards or more guards? Can you give us an idea of the proportion of people doing the work, the labour, compared to those guarding?
Two guards would be assigned to watch over a group of 30 or 40 workers. However, the guards were always on patrol. They did not remain stationed in one place.
And did any of those guards come from your unit, K4?
None of the workers from my unit was assigned as a guard.
You mentioned that there were members from Division 450 at the airfield in your statement. Were any of those members of that division, were any of them guards?
I did not know about that, and they probably belonged to another division, and I was prohibited from walking around. I only knew about the situation in my unit.
And did you know which military division or military unit that was running the airfield, operating it, managing it?
No, I did not really know about the leadership group in charge of the airfield worksite.
And one last question on this. Do you know which military group the guards may have belonged to?
I did not know about that. and I saw guards I saw guards on patrol at night time in the area where I was sleeping.
And talking about when you were with your unit before you went for training, did the guards get the same work conditions as your unit? Did they have to work as long?
I did not see those guards during the daytime, and I did not know where they were during the time, and I did not know any of them.
You've talked about having insufficient food when you were there for the first time. You've talked about people dying of overwork and of starvation. Did you see any of the guards dying of starvation or overwork?
Those who did the guard duty at night did not see any worker who died during the working hours.
I'm just asking what you saw. Did you see any guard die of starvation or overwork? Or was it just the workers that you saw die of that?
Allow me to say again that I did not see any guards died from overwork or starvation, and the only people who died from overwork or starvations were those workers.
And if a worker was feeling ill, did you ever see any of the workers ill or unwell? And would they get medical treatment? Did they get medical treatment from what you saw?
For workers who were ill, only when their condition was serious, that is, they could not get up anymore, then the person would be sent to the medical unit.
When you were at the airfield, could you complain about not having enough food? Could you complain about having to work too hard? Could you complain about not having enough hygiene facilities to wash? Did you feel comfortable complaining about that when you were there?
in terms of having food with no sanitation whatsoever, we didn't dare to complain. Even if the shower soup, the Khmer shower soup that we had with water lily, with morning glory, it was, even if it's hard, we could not complain. We had to eat the morning glory.
And can you remind us why you couldn't complain? What was the atmosphere like at the airfield? Why did you not feel comfortable to complain?
In such a situation, if we were to complain, we would be accused of being a spoiled person and of being an enemy against Angkar. So we had to keep our mouth shut, bit our lip, and just focus on working.
And just briefly, on all the different work activities that were going on at the airfield, from what you can remember, both before your training and after your training, can you tell us the types of work that was being done to build the airfield and the buildings around? What types of things were people doing?
During the work at the airfield work site, there were various groups that people were assigned to. For instance, to pull grass at the airfield, while others would engage in the compacting the soil from the earth-carrying truck. So there were all kinds of activities going on at the time.
And the activities that you did before you went to Phnom Penh, I think you said you were pulling grass. What other activities were you doing before you learned how to be a land surveyor?
Before I was sent for training in Phnom Penh, I was assigned to pull grass, to dig out the roots of grass and trees.
And were others in your unit assigned to do that as well?
We all did the same work.
And was your leg still a problem? You said you had a broken leg. Was there any lasting pain or injury coming from that leg whilst you were working?
While I was working there, I simply forced myself to do it. It was the mentality that forced me to do it. Physically, I was not capable of doing it because of my leg injury, but I had to do it, to force myself to do it.
And can you tell us how it felt? How it felt to be pulling the grass with the injured leg, with insufficient food, with lack of sleep, with no hygiene facilities. How did it feel? Can you describe that to the court, please?
Allow me to inform the chamber about this. At that time, I felt that I was like a dead person, that I already died, and I never thought that I would survive. I thought that I would die from overworked or exhaustion, and that I would go and meet my parents. I lost contact with my parents for several years at that stage, and I was thinking of them, and sometimes I wept while I were about to sleep, and I was hopeless because of the condition of the working condition on site.
Were the guards treated differently to you and your unit? Did the guards have the same conditions that you've just talked about?
Allow me to inform the chamber that I did not see any guard engaging in any work that the workers were doing, and I only saw them on patrol at night time while we were resting, and we were not allowed to speak to any of them.
Thank you. Mr. Witness, I'd like to move to another topic, if we can. Moving away from the conditions that people endured at the airfield and discussing a little more about arrests that occurred. You've said to us that before you came to the airfield, there were arrests in your division. But now I would like you to think about when you were at the airfield, were there arrests occurring? And before you answer, I want to refresh your memory with the statement that you gave to the investigator as to what you said, and then we can have a discussion about that. I'm referring back to the original statement that was quoted, Mr. President. In your statement you said, trucks came to arrest people every night, arresting about 20 each time. At meetings they called out names for people to leave the meeting and to be arrested at once. Of my unit, only 14 remain alive. Is that correct? When you were at the airfield, these frequent arrests were continuing every night.
Allow me to inform the chamber in this regard. More arrests were being conducted while I was working at Unit 317 at Khmuing, Kop Sreu, and that's when the arrests were intensified, and in my unit only 14 remained.
Are you saying then, from the 400 people that were in your unit before you went to the airfield, only 14 you've only seen 14 again since 1979? Is that correct?
After 1979, that is after the liberation, only 14 of us met, and we spoke about what happened, and that's how I knew that only 14 of us survived.
Of the men that you remember in your unit, K4, other than those 14, have you ever seen those men again?
Besides the 14, I never saw anyone else from my unit returned.
We'll talk about the intense period where there were arrests from your unit before you went to the airfield, but for now, is it the case that there were arrests at the airfield that you saw and trucks came with people to arrest them? Is that correct?
In K4 unit regiment 317, more arrests were made in these two respective units. However, while I worked at Kampong Chnang, I did not see many arrests.
Did you see any arrests at Kampong Chnang? And if you saw any arrests, can you explain what happened?
While I worked in Kampong Chnang, I saw the arrest as well, but the frequency of the arrest were less than that at Khmuing, Kop Sreu. I think the arrests in Kampong Chnang were for the remaining alleged enemies that they did not arrest at Khmuing or Kop Sreu.
Are you saying that there were arrests at Kampong Chnang of people from your unit, even if they weren't as frequent as the other place?
Answer. Those who were arrested in there were not many arrested in Kampong Chnang, so I could say the arrests in Kampong Chnang were not too frequent.
Can you explain, even though they weren't that frequent, can you explain how an arrest at Kampong Chnang occurred from what you saw? How did it happen?
Answer. From what I saw, the person who would be arrested would be called into a meeting, and during which that individual was arrested.
And do you know in which direction that individual was taken?
Answer. I do not know where the arrested people were sent to.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to go back to when you were working at Kinyom Kop Sorao, sorry for the pronunciation. Before you went to the airfield, you said there were very frequent arrests in your unit. And if I can just read what you have said to the investigator at the ECC, it's E3/467, English 00205073, Khmer 0017 0618 and 9, French 00205077. And this is what you said. What did they have you do there? How many people were there? And what were the conditions like? This is at K4 now, not at the airfield. This is before you've arrived at the airfield. And you said, at K4, there were 600 handicapped soldiers. They forced us, the entire unit, to make 4 hectares of rice fields per day. The food was insufficient. Some people died to starvation. I saw 36 to 37 with my own eyes. Tatu was the person in charge of Unit 4, or K4. He also came from the North Zone and was later arrested. I don't want to talk about the conditions at Knyom Kop Sorao, but I want to talk about the arrests in your division, in your unit. And you go on to say, did you ever see them arrest people Why were they arrested? You said, I saw them arrest many people, transporting them by Land Rover. They came to arrest 4 to 10 people every night. They came to arrest them directly at the site. Sometimes they called them to Phnom Penh for arrest. They accused all of those arrested of being CIA links. During those arrests, they tied their arms behind their backs, parrot wing style, stuffed them in bags, and tossed them right into the vehicles. Is this the intense period of arrests that you were talking about before you went to the airfield?
Answer. The frequent arrests happened at Khmuy.
And can you explain to the court, in your own words today, how those arrests would happen? What did you see?
Answer. I would like to inform the chamber as follows. During the time people were arrested, these people were called to a meeting and they were asked to queue. And the individual name was called, and then he or she was tied up, kicked into the bag, and uploaded into the truck.
Would everyone from your unit be called to these meetings? Would everyone see it, or only the people that were arrested were called to the meeting? Can you help us understand what it was like when these arrests were continuing at Knyom Kop Sarao?
Answer. When people were being arrested, as I stated, everyone was called into a meeting, and all of us were asked to queue, and some certain names to be arrested would be called, and they had to walk to the front, and after that time they were tied up.
In this intense period of arrest, you have in your statement, they came to arrest 4 to 10 people every night. Is that correct? You were being called to meetings every night, and people would be taken out of those meetings and taken away.
Answer. Yes, that is true.
And from what you remember, even if the meetings are getting smaller and smaller, but how many people were initially at these meetings, how many people from your unit would be going into the meeting? Would it be 10, 20, 40, 100, or the whole unit? Can you explain, please?
Answer. Allow me to tell the court. Not only my unit was arrested. Numbers of soldiers in the regiment 317 are becoming fewer and fewer.
So can you give the court an example of the numbers of people that would have had to attend one of those meetings? Is it in the hundreds, or is it in the 20s and 30s, or any other number? How big were they, or how small were they?
Answer. I could not give my estimate. People disappear from time to time.
And how were the meetings called? Who would call the meeting? Would it be the unit chief of K4 or the other unit chiefs? Who would call the meeting?
Answer. In the unit 317, said the witness, it was not members of unit K4 were arrested. Soldiers of 317, most of them were arrested.
Thank you. In your statement, you give some more information about how these arrests occurred. And I'd like to read it to you to see if it refreshes your memory as to the facts. You were asked, who came to make the arrests? And you said, the security people came with the vehicles with Presar and Tul Sleng markings. I know that Presar and Tul Sleng were prisons because the leaders always threatened that anyone who was lazy or who did wrong would be sent to Presar or Tul Sleng. In 1976, they began to arrest the leaders from the southwest zone, and during 1977, they arrested the leaders from the north zone. They arrested all the leaders from division level down to the squad leaders. I personally saw them arrest chairman of K4, Tatu, the deputy chairman, Ta Sen, and Ta Rum, who was in charge of logistics. Before their arrest, they called a meeting of the troops, and they called those three to the front. I did not know who made the arrests. They announced that they had come to arrest traitors. I never saw those who were arrested return. Is that correct? You saw the unit chief, the deputy chief, and the man in charge of logistics, Ta Rum, arrested on that day?
ខ្ញុំបាទសូមឆ្លើយជូន
Answer. During that time, I was in the meeting. I witnessed that incident. I did not conceal the information.
And you were also asked at E3467, English 00205073, Khmer 00170619, and French 00205077. You answered this question and that was asked of you. Aside from the three leaders, did you see them arrest other leaders? And you said, I saw them arrest company chairman Ta Sim and Ta Veng. In 1977, they arrested Ta Un. They announced that Ta Un, Ta Kim and Ta Yet were CIA links. They had a meeting in July 1977, and at that time they announced, your leaders are CIA and are traitors. What do you think about that? When all the leaders from the North Zone had been arrested, the South Zone would come to take control in their places. After that, they sent you to Kampong Chnang. My first question is this also correct, that you saw these company chairmen, Ta Sim and Ta Veng, be arrested?
Answer. I witnessed the arrest, as I told the courts.
Thank you. And just so we understand it a little more, Knyom Kop Sorao, that area, that was it a rice farming area? And then did it have buildings as well? Can you explain what that area was? You said you worked there for quite a while, so we understand where these arrests are occurring. The physical layout, if you can.
Answer. At Khmuing and Kop Srau, the arrest occurred at houses of people who had been evacuated.
Is it correct that you went to quite a lot of these meetings where people were taken away and arrested? Is that correct?
Answer. Meetings were held in different locations, and people had been arrested during the meeting. I could swear to this fact that people had been arrested.
And what would make you, what made you go to the meeting? Because obviously, very quickly, you were learning that if you went to the meeting, there was a chance that you would be arrested and taken away. Why would you go to the meetings if you knew that that could happen to you?
ខ្ញុំបាទស្ដាប់
Witness, I could not get the gist of your question. Could you repeat it?
Perhaps if I do it another way, did you have any choice as to whether you went to the meeting or not?
នៅពេលនោះ
Answer: I did not have any choice at that time. When I was called into a meeting, I had to be there. If I refused the request or the call, I would be accused of being an enemy.
So who would make the call to go to the meetings? How would you find out in the day that there was a meeting and you must attend? And how would your fellow K4 workers, how would they know to go to the meeting? Who told you? When were you told? How were you told?
ខ្ញុំបាទសូមឆ្លើយអង្គតុលាការ
Answer: when chiefs, deputy chiefs and members of K4 units were arrested, cadres from Southwest Zone came to replace them. So there were people responsible for coming and calling people into the meetings.
And did you see whether or not it was the same people that were coming to arrest members of your unit and other units? Was it the same people that came every day or at every meeting? Or did the faces change?
Answer: those who came to arrest people, their faces changed. I mean,
And you said that you knew about Tul Sleng and Prey Sa because you were told it by people that were making the arrests. Is that correct? You were aware of that security facility whilst you were at Knyom Kopsarai?
allow me to tell the court. At Khmuin and Kopsarau, cadre of the north were not leaders at that time. Cadre from the southwest zone would make statement that anyone who was lazy would be sent to Tul Sleng and prisons. This is the message that I could recall it from that time.
Thank you. What was the atmosphere like at Knyom Kopsarau? What was the atmosphere like when these arrests were occurring every night? People were being taken away from your unit, other people's units. how did you feel being in that atmosphere? Can you explain to us what it would have been like?
ខ្ញុំបាទសូមជម្រាបជូនអង្គតុលាការ
Answer. We had no feeling in ourselves, and we were afraid of our lives because we could see that arrests happened every day. And as for my case, I was terrified, so terrified and worried at that time.
Thank you. Witness, I'd like to show you a document. I'd like to show you a list with a name on it. And the document number is E3/342. It's the S21 revised prisoner list that contains over 12,000 names of people that were sent to S21. And I'd like to ask you about one name that appears on that list. And Mr. President, I was wondering whether we could show the document on the screen to the witness, if we can enlarge it.
President, you can do so.
For reference, the prisoner number is 8967 on the list. The document gets bigger, Your Honours. It can be enlarged. Whilst we're waiting for that, Your Honour, if I can just put a statement if I can just put a perhaps we'll leave it for today and we'll show the document on Monday. Your Honour, I have a statement to put to the witness that will take about 2 or 3 minutes. If you want to end now, I'm happy to end, otherwise I'll put the statement. A question, a large question. All right.
President, I think it is now the convenient for the adjournment because it is Friday today. The hearing today comes to an end, and we will resume on Monday, on the 15th June 2015, and the chamber will continue to hear witness Kai Lue, and then if we have time we will listen to the testimony of 901. And actually 901 was first named as 2TCW 830. Mr. Cao Lue, the hearing of your testimony has not come to an end yet. You are invited to be here again on 15th of June 2015, starting from 9 a.m. You may rest now. Court officer, please work with a vessel to send this witness Cao Lue back to his residence or to the place where he's staying currently, and bring him back on Monday, 15th of June 2015. Security officer, you are also instructed to bring the two accused, Kieu Sampon and Nguyen Chia, back to the detention facility and have them returned on Monday, 15th of June 2009 and before 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.